Around 1820, Araminta, or Minty Ross, was born to Benjamin Ross and Harriet Green. Araminta later changed her first name to Harriet in honor of her mother. Growing up a slave, Harriet was put to work at a young age. At 5 years old, she was rented out as a nursemaid. When the baby cried, Harriet received whippings that left her with permanent scars, mental and physical. Around age 7, Harriet was rented by a planter to set muskrat traps, and she was later used as a field hand. Her zeal for justice and equality took flight at age 12 when, upon seeing a master about to throw a heavy weight at a fugitive, Harriet stepped between the slave and the master, taking the blow of the weight to her head. The impact of the weight broke Harriet's skull, and the good deed left her with headaches and narcolepsy for the rest of her life. In the mid-1840s, Harriet married a free black man named John Tubman, and was thus known as Harriet Tubman. On September 17, 1849, Harriet and 2 of her brothers escaped their Maryland plantation. Although her 2 brothers went back, Harriet used the Underground Railroad and traveled 90 miles north to freedom within Pennsylvania. Even though she was free, Harriet couldn't enjoy her freedom knowing that others were still enslaved. She soon returned to the South to lead her niece and her niece's children through the Underground Railroad to freedom. Harriet's husband, John, had remarried, and when she tried to bring him north, he chose to stay in Maryland with his new wife. In 1850, the Fugitive Slave Act was passed, allowing fugitive and freed slaves in the North to be captured and enslaved. This made Harriet's role as an Underground Railroad conductor much harder and forced her to change her leading tactics. She led slaves further north to Canada by traveling at night and usually in the spring or fall when the days were shorter. Harriet led at least 70 slaves to freedom, and she claimed, "I never ran my train off the track, and I never lost a passenger." When the Civil War began in 1861, Harriet found new ways to fight slavery. She assisted fugitive slaves while working as a nurse, cook, and laundress. Harriet also used her knowledge of medicines to treat sick soldiers and fugitive slaves. After the Civil War, Harriet settled with family and friends on land she owned in Auburn, New York. She married former slave and Civil War veteran Nelson Davis in 1869, and they adopted a little girl a few years later. Although pneumonia took Harriet Tubman's life on March 10, 1913, her legacy lives on within the schools and museums that bear her name. Her story continues to be retold in books, movies, and documentaries.